Okay everyone, you know the drill. We are now in the month of July, so today I'll be recapping every film I watched in June. I started June by rewatching 101 Dalmatians. Obviously, I watched this because of Cruella, and while I think that film is great, this one is a bit better. Next, I watched Wes Anderson's Isle of Dogs. This film has Wes Anderson's style all over it. I've only seen 2 of his films, and just by those and what I have seen from the others, I can tell he has a very distinctive visual style. I think that he should definitely make more stop-motion animation films because the 2 he has made are great. It is hard to not compare Fantastic Mr. Fox and Isle of Dogs, but I think that Fantastic Mr. Fox is better, even though Isle of Dogs is still great. The animation is phenomenal, and this has a spectacular cast and crew. Behind the camera, you have Wes Anderson, who is a great director from what I've seen. And then for the voice acting, you have stars like Bill Murray, Bryan Cranston, Jeff Goldblum, Edward Norton, and Scarlett Johansson, who were all fantastic. There were some comedic elements too that I wasn't expecting, and it was all made even funnier by the performances. You can tell all the actors are having fun in their roles, and I just really enjoyed this film. I liked all the dog characters, though the human characters weren't my favorite. All of the colors were bright, and the entire film was appealing. Isle of Dogs is a great film to me, and I am really looking forward to seeing more of Wes Anderson's filmography. On the 3rd, I rewatched the remake of Aladdin. You all can say whatever you want about me and my opinions, but seriously, I love this film. Is it flawless? Of course not. In fact, I think at times the CGI is very bad, and whoever plays Jafar is a really bad actor because he barely showed any emotion, and it sounded like he was literally reading his lines. When Will Smith was blue, it looked like they photoshopped his face onto a blue CGI man, and it looked kind of gross, but the rest of the film I think is kind of great. It is certainly not something that should exist because the original was already perfectly fine by itself, but it is still super fun. All the colors are so bright, and when the CGI does look good, this movie looks pretty great. Robin Williams was perfect as the genie in the original, and you could never replace him, but I think that Will Smith did a really good job and was very funny at some moments, and sang the songs pretty well. Speaking of songs, I think that the new versions of the old songs are great. Friend Like Me is fun and very creative with the visuals. Prince Ali is catchy and a colorful song that I think is great. One Jump Ahead is fast-paced and has an amazing set. A Whole New World has great harmonies and is a beautiful song. And Arabian Nights is pretty good. I think that Will Smith is a better rapper than singer, but what he sang was still good. The new song exclusively for this film, Speechless, was possibly the best song and was one of the best. Like I just said about One Jump Ahead, the sets in this film are gorgeous too. The Disney live-action remakes are definitely unnecessary and are definitely made for money, but some of them are really great, like this in my opinion. A lot of them aren't, but this is an exception. When you complain about the countless remakes after remakes, just remember that making movies is a business, and that the people that make them get paid because that is their job. So if they just try to cash in money, I can see why, because I mean, if you want money, make something that will actually make money. It's good to take risks, but I see why they made this. Aladdin isn't even my favorite out of the 19 remakes, but I think that it is still really good. Then I watched Flora and Ulysses. My favorite part was the Titanic references, but the Star Wars doorbell was pretty sick, and all the Marvel references were great. It is just a really fun time and just a really enjoyable film. It is hard to believe, and some of the comedy fell flat, but I liked the film and thought that it was very fun. Also, I got so sad when the figurine of Jack slowly sank down in the water and Rose was just laying on this thingy watching him. Now I want to watch Titanic again. After that, I watched the remake of The Jungle Book. So lately, I've been doubting myself if I actually like some of the Disney live-action remakes, so this month I watched some and liked both of them, which are this and Aladdin. Obviously, the visuals are spectacular and all the animals look 100% real, but I also love most of the performances. Neil Sethi doesn't capture the role of Mowgli perfectly, but I can't blame him because it was his first film he had ever been in, so I think that he did a good job. Bill Murray, funny as always, is great and the perfect choice to play Baloo in my opinion. Ben Kingsley is amazing as Bagheera, and Idris Elba was phenomenal as Shere Khan. I feel like Idris Elba honestly should have played Scar in the Lion King remake, and Chiwetel Ejiofor, who plays Scar in the Lion King remake, should have played Shere Khan in this, but in either situation, Idris Elba would do fantastic, which he did in The Jungle Book. It adds a lot of action since the original film, which is awesome too. There is action in the beginning, middle, and end, and every action scene I think is exciting. The ending put a smile on my face, and the entire thing is fun. Maybe nostalgia is kicking in right now, but every time I watch this film, I always thoroughly enjoy it and love it. On the 6th, I watched Finding Ohana. I seriously only watched this because I want to watch as many 2021 movies as I can to make up for 2020. The acting is kind of bad, and it even copies the flashback thingy from Ant-Man, which feels very out of place. Like many people have been saying, this film gives me Goonie vibes, but obviously is not nearly as good. It has some good adventure parts and was overall entertaining. It feels exactly like a straight-to-streaming movie, is super forgettable, and a film I'm going to forget about completely in T-1 day, as Jeremy Jahns would say. Next I watched 12 Angry Men. This film takes place entirely in one room, with the same 12 people, yet somehow it is very entertaining. While watching, I didn't know whether to plead guilty or not guilty about if the boy killed his father or not, and I think that mystery was executed really well. Most of the 12 jurors had personality, and even at the beginning I was excited to see if the boy was guilty or innocent. Every argument or conversation between the men was useful for the film and very entertaining for the audience. I feel like the film could have used more time to make some of the reasonings more believable, but what we got was still fantastic. I actually feel like I wouldn't like this in color. I don't know why, I just feel like the black and white made it more serious. That seems stupid, but I liked it. I'm not a huge fan of old black and white films, but this and Psycho are pretty amazing. On the 9th, I watched The Mighty Ducks. This is a pretty fun sports movie, but there isn't really anything that makes it stand out amongst others like it. Hockey is not a sport that I play, so none of it was really relatable, but it was fun seeing the kids run around on the ice and fail at the beginning. It sticks to the main formula these types of sports movies with kids use, and does it about exactly the same, but it was super enjoyable and a really good time. I kind of watched this just for the heck of it, so I don't have a lot to say, but it is pretty good. However, I do like the show on Disney Plus a little more. On the 10th, I watched In the Heights, and I made an entire review for it, so to hear my thoughts, check out that video up in the iCard. The next day, I watched Wish Dragon. Wish Dragon is a film that has many similarities to other films, most noticeable one being Aladdin. Now that I think about it, it is kind of a mix between Aladdin and Raya and the Last Dragon. This is the second Sony Pictures animation film of the year, the first being The Mitchells vs. the Machines, but not nearly as good. The animation in The Mitchells vs. the Machines was phenomenal, but this animation is just okay. The voice acting is decent, and the concept was just fine. It was kind of funny sometimes, even though it copies a lot of other films most of the time. The ending was pretty good and had some really good moments. Sadly, those moments lasted for only like 10 seconds though. Also, Jackie Chan is the producer, so that's pretty cool. It just went by so fast and was very entertaining and was pretty fun. Then I watched Hero Mode, which was pretty bad. MatPat, Sean Astin, this was for you. Hero Mode was fun and entertaining, but still not good. Sean Astin and MatPat were the best part, though at moments it was very cringe and unfunny. The special effects and green screens were pretty bad, and the teen actors weren't amazing. The plot wasn't investing, and the video games the characters were creating weren't very good. Everything happens in the exact way you would expect them to, and all of it was pretty predictable, especially in the end. It was enjoyable. I love Sean Astin and MatPat, but it is just kind of a film that exists and doesn't do anything special. It'd be good for little kids, but it's not good for much else. After that, I watched M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense. This is a masterpiece, instantly in my top 30 of all time. Every scene has so much detail, and that makes it so then in later scenes they are useful and can use those details and make it more suspenseful. The way they included that you could see your breath when you're around a ghost was clever and useful later on. The twist at the end was amazing, and I was not expecting it at all. They gave us little hints that Bruce Willis's character was dead early on, but I never picked up on them, and then at the end when they tell us, it is so unexpected. The child acting was phenomenal, and you can just see how disturbed Cole's character was just by his eyes. There are certain scenes that made me jump, and all of them were phenomenal. This film never dragged, but I also feel like it could have used a little bit more time. But what we have is still fantastic, and we should all be grateful we have this. Bruce Willis was great, and now I know what people mean by saying that they pulled an M. Night Shyamalan on us by giving us a huge twist. My favorite scenes in the film were the most tense, especially the one where Cole is in his tent and then sees the dead girl. That one was really good. In summary, this was an amazing thriller and made me want to watch M. Night Shyamalan's other films, which I actually did after this. Not all of them, but about 2 others in June that I will talk about later. On the 14th, I rewatched The Little Mermaid. Fun film with some great musical numbers and pretty funny moments. The voice acting was pretty good, and there were a lot of really good characters, even though this is kind of in the middle of my ranking of the Disney Renaissance. There were some exciting moments, and Ursula's death was probably the most violent ever in a Disney film. Clayton getting hung in Tarzan was pretty violent, but Ursula literally got impaled by a ship and then popped and drowned. Before watching this, I thought that I liked Ursula and her song more than I actually did while watching the film. I thought her song was very weak and their motivations weren't very clear. So yeah, this movie is really good, but nothing amazing in my opinion. Next, I watched Unbreakable. I absolutely love this film. The cinematography is breathtaking, and M. Night Shyamalan's direction is absolutely phenomenal. He really knows how to build tension in the scene, and every actor or actress was great. There were some comedic moments, and this is one of the best superhero movies, no doubt. David Dunn was a very interesting character, and Mr. Glass was portrayed and written very well. Samuel L. Jackson just did a very good job and was very believable. Same goes with Bruce Willis. The concept had lots of potential and was delivered in an amazing and clever way. Some people say this film is a drag, but I disagree. It is very slow moving, but the dialogue is engaging enough to keep you entertained the entire time. Every shot is detailed, and this movie has some amazing editing. Even though I've only seen a little bit of his film so far, M. Night Shyamalan is already becoming one of my favorite directors of all time. Then I watched Chef. Okay, so first off, I don't think I've ever been more hungry while watching a film than in this. All the food they make just looks so good and made me so hungry. Now to the actual review. Chef is a very well-made film about a chef that quits his job at a famous restaurant and then starts a food truck. The concept is simple, but it is portrayed in a pretty special way in my opinion. The editing was pretty unique, and I love how this film has some dramatic moments, but it is still a hilarious comedy. The jokes were perfectly timed and delivered amazingly by these really funny actors and actresses. The cast is seriously one of the best ever from lately, and features phenomenal actors giving phenomenal performances. Jon Favreau's character was very likable, and Jon Favreau gave a fantastic performance. The score was fun and made it all even more enjoyable. It's impossible not to smile at least once while watching this film, and it is pretty great all around. Chef is a feel-good movie that had very fun and funny moments, and overall one of the best in Jon Favreau's filmography. On the 17th, I watched Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead. Army of the Dead is pure chaos. That is the best and easiest way to describe it. It is a violent zombie movie at its core, but there is still a lot of fun to be had. The way they mixed 2 genres, being heist and zombie apocalypse, was just so clever and made a very different movie that stands out compared to other zombie and or heist films. It was super fun seeing these people break into a casino and find a safe with a bunch of money, but then also happen in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. That made for some really great action. There was one certain character that made me laugh a couple times and was definitely the comedic relief for the film. Dave Bautista is amazing, and even though some of the characters are stereotypical, almost every one of them had their own personality. The soundtrack was very good too. In the beginning, when they played the song Viva Las Vegas by Elvis Presley, I just had a smile on my face, even though at the same time zombies were biting people and stuff on screen. This was the first movie outside of the DCU I had seen directed by Zack Snyder, and it exceeded expectations for me. I really like his style, how he uses a bunch of slow motion, has amazing cinematography, and stuff like that. This film isn't a masterpiece, but it is really good. Some people complain about how it may have overstayed its welcome, but I personally enjoyed every second of it. Sometimes it got too over the top for me, but other than that and a couple of characters being forgettable, it is a great film that I really enjoyed. Next up, I watched Pixar's Luca. Recently, I ranked all the Pixar movies in a tier list, and this landed in the great tier because I truly think it's a great film. After that, I watched The Founder. Who knew a film about McDonald's could be so good? It was a very interesting biopic, and I thought it was very entertaining to see how McDonald's came to be the billion-dollar restaurant we all know. Michael Keaton was fantastic as always, and while I don't think this is as good as the other John Lee Hancock film I've seen, Saving Mr. Banks, it is still a very interesting and great film. I really love biopics, and this was a pretty good one. It's just sad that this restaurant turned into what it is now. Seriously, McDonald's sells a Travis Scott meal. Who knew? Then I watched Quentin Tarantino's newest film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is one of those films that has no real plot. All of the events just seem to happen out of midair, and sometimes that was a good thing, but it seemed to just jump all over the place for me. Quentin Tarantino's dialogue is phenomenal, and the performances from Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, and Kurt Russell were all phenomenal as well. However, the nearly 3-hour runtime was a big bother for me. It wasn't necessarily boring for me, but it felt even longer than it was and took up too much time in my opinion. There was some humor thrown in too that was pretty funny. The third act was underwhelming. I had heard a lot of people saying that it was this absolutely insane ending, but I just thought that it was an okay ending to an only good film. There are certain moments that are absolutely incredible, especially when DiCaprio's character Rick Dalton was shooting a movie. I was just really engaged in those parts of the film, but the rest was only kind of good. I think that a lot of this movie is great, but a lot of it isn't, so it's just a really well-made film that is kind of frustrating in my personal opinion. Next, I watched Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler was a really good movie. Jake Gyllenhaal's performance was absolutely incredible, and the concept was cool. It got really exciting at the end, and sad at the end at one moment too. I had a bad viewing experience with this film because I was sick while watching, but it was still a very good film that I had a great time with. On the 20th, I rewatched Phineas and Ferb the movie Across the Second Dimension. I've always loved the Phineas and Ferb TV show, and I've always loved this film. I have a ton of nostalgia with this, and we all love nostalgic films. All of it is just so creative and funny, and it is easily the best Disney Channel original movie. The songs are amazing, and the animation is pretty great. There are surprisingly some good themes and emotional moments when it comes to Phineas and Perry's relationship about trust, too. I've seen this movie many times, and every time I love it. There are some amazing jokes and comedic moments in the film that make me laugh out loud, and I truly think that this is an amazing movie. Also, the ending is literally the end game for Phineas and Ferb fans. So beautiful. After that, I rewatched Toy Story 4. I think this is a great film. Was it necessary? I don't really think so, but man, it was a fun film. Adding Keegan-Michael Key and Jordan Peele to the mix as Ducky and Bunny also made this film one of, if not the funniest film to come out of Pixar. The jokes by them were absolutely hilarious, and I have just always loved Keegan-Michael Key. The emotional payoff is nice, and bringing back Bo Peep was a good choice in my opinion, because they never fully told us how she disappeared between Toy Story 2 and 3. This is just an overall amazing film that I enjoyed even more than I did the first 2 times before. Next, I watched Psycho. This got even better on rewatch. It never drags and is very compelling. As of now, it is in my top 10 of all time. Wow. Also, one thing I really liked was how it was black and white. When it came out, movies were starting to be in color, but this was in black and white, and it makes everything more eerie, and I really like that about it. Since I watched Psycho, I wanted to watch the biopic Hitchcock. Better than I expected, actually. Anthony Hopkins is actually the perfect person to play Alfred Hitchcock, and his performance was one of the best parts. I loved seeing these actors I know and love, such as Anthony Hopkins, Scarlett Johansson, and Ralph Macchio, play these characters from Psycho, or play people that were involved in the making of Psycho. My favorite part was probably the ending, when we got to see and hear people's reactions to the shower scene in 1960 in the theater. I think that it would be super fun to travel to 1960 and actually see Psycho in the theater when it first came out, and I think that this is probably the closest I'm going to get. It was so awesome and just put a smile on my face. I also loved the part of the film where Hitchcock was talking to the camera about his next film. He said that he lacked inspiration, and then moments later a bird flew onto his shoulder. I think that that is pretty clever and funny moment because his next film ended up being The Birds, which is also a film I really love. I think that Hitchcock fans, and most of all Psycho fans, should definitely check out this film because it is a very fascinating biopic about the making of one of my favorite films of all time. On the 23rd, I watched Central Intelligence. I have no clue why I loved Central Intelligence so much. I just did. The chemistry between Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart was absolutely perfect, and they were hilarious on screen together. Kevin Hart was incredibly funny, and Dwayne Johnson did pretty well. I laughed out loud so much and enjoyed this film so much. One time it was so funny that I had to pause the film to regain myself or I would have missed what happened next. There was also a really funny cameo from Melissa McCarthy, so that's a win. There were some really heartfelt moments when dealing with the character Bob Stone that actually landed very well, and while this film doesn't break any boundaries in the film industry, it sure does have some amazing comedic and emotional moments. I actually thought it taught a good lesson at the end. Of course, they made a joke about it, but it was a good lesson while it lasted. I loved all the movie references, and Dwayne Johnson handled those very well in my opinion. It was kind of a stupid movie, but all of it was so fun, and I thoroughly enjoyed every second of it. There was a mediocre twist, and the writing wasn't spot on, so that is kind of holding it back from being better, but Central Intelligence is still a really funny action comedy, which is a genre I love. Then I rewatched The Lion King for like the 14th time. It's just a masterpiece, okay? After that, I watched Split. It is so weird. I was hoping for more of a connection between the film Unbreakable. Sadly, there was only a tiny one at the end, so that was kind of disappointing. That one part at the end, though, was easily the best part. I loved the cameo. But the rest was still pretty good, too. Very weird, but good. I really enjoyed it, I think. It is my least favorite of M. Night Shyamalan films so far, but it is still good. Though I haven't seen the ones considered to be his worst yet, so I can't really judge. He is becoming one of my favorite directors. Some of the events taking place and the whole plot is kind of sad when it comes to the kidnappings and stuff. Anya Taylor-Joy and James McAvoy, however, gave Oscar-worthy performances, especially James McAvoy, because he could portray those 23, I think, characters or personalities all amazingly. Not a fun watch, but still pretty intense and engaging. Just not nearly as good as Unbreakable. Split is still a good M. Night Shyamalan film, and I am super excited to watch Glass soon. Let's hope it doesn't disappoint. While everyone went to see F9 in the theaters, I stayed home and watched a different movie about cars, Ford v Ferrari. I'm cool like that. But in all seriousness, I think that Ford v Ferrari is great. Great cinematography, acting performances, script, pacing, use of color, and more. I don't really have that much to say. I may be in the minority here, but I don't really think that this has anything special that stands out. Just a fun, really good watch. It's one of those films that I don't know why I love, I just do. It got a little long, but the length wasn't that bad. The ending was great too. I just really enjoyed this, and you have to take my word for it. 2019 is such a great year for film. Next up, I watched Skyscraper. Dumb fun. Dwayne Johnson plays pretty much just himself in this, and he actually did a pretty good job, I think. The tension is high, and I was on the edge of my seat for most of the film. The action is filmed pretty well, and the colors look good. I liked the cinematography, I guess, and there was a lot of suspense that was packed. There is stupid stuff in this, but a lot of fun and exciting stuff too. I feel like the story could progress a lot better if there was just simply a fire in the building instead of having terrorists, because I would have had more of an emotional attachment to the characters and it wouldn't be copying the film Die Hard as much. Haven't seen it yet, I just know what it's about. The CGI is good, and really, I got what I wanted. Dumb action, not much to the plot. My main problems are with the script, but seriously, that's exactly what I expected. There are some corny lines in it, but I had a great time with it and thoroughly enjoyed it. Very forgettable though. Adequate film overall, it met my expectations, but it's nothing amazing. Then I watched Ocean's 11. This was a fine movie, a star-studded cast, which was easily the best part of the film, but the rest was just kind of okay. It was really cheesy and had an early 2000s feel to it, but I don't know if I should count that as a negative or not, since it is an early 2000s film, but I didn't really like the feel of it. It was a fun time and I liked some of the heist parts, but it wasn't really that investing and the comedy didn't really work. It looked funnier than it actually was and was just mediocre. George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, Don Cheadle, Andy Garcia, and Julia Roberts all did great, however, and that cast is pretty great, one of my favorites. I know I have been praising the cast, but I honestly think I would have liked this a little bit more if it starred Bruce Willis, Mark Wahlberg, and Owen Wilson like it was originally supposed to. Ocean's 11 was still good, just didn't really impress me with anything other than the cast. I don't really think I'll check out the sequels. Maybe someday. I would also like to add that at first I dug the soundtrack, but let me tell you, it got old fast. On the 29th, I watched A Quiet Place. Wow, it was really good. I'll be making a video on the Quiet Place film once I see the sequel, and then you can hear my thoughts. And then finally, I watched Arrival. I mean, it was kinda good. It isn't the masterpiece so many people say it is in my eyes, but I did enjoy it. It was a good introduction to Denis Villeneuve, I guess, but for me, it wasn't all that interesting. Let's just stop for a second. I know what you were thinking. You think that it is a very interesting movie and that my opinion is wrong. It's okay if you think that. I'm just not really a big fan of the aliens and the whole concept of this film. Jeremy Renner and Amy Adams did do great, however, and their performances were easily my favorite part of the film. But the thing is, sadly, I don't think I would really like this movie as much if they weren't in it. It is good that they were great, but when a film for me is only good when its cast is good, that means that the rest of the film isn't very good. Yeah, the performances and the CGI were great, and I enjoyed it for the most part. It was just not something I was really invested in. You can disagree with me, but I just think this was only a kind of good movie. And that's what I watched in June. I watched a lot of great films, so if you haven't seen one that I liked, go check it out and tell me in the comment section if you agree or disagree with me. But with all that said, stay tuned and subscribe to Cinema Ranks.